We all need gis, rash guards, and a bunch of gear to train Jiu-Jitsu. Here at RŌL Academy, we've been using Fuji Sports for a very, very long time, but more importantly, they've been sponsoring the RŌL Radio podcast for over a year at this point. Gary?
Yeah, I'm checking out the website right now. Anything you could possibly need, but the new stuff, this American Grappler stuff, is amazing. It's so slick looking. Rash guard shorts, really cool, giant eagle on it. It is nice. And then on the opposite end of the spectrum, they've got the Be a Menace Happy No-Gi lineup. So as you're getting choked out, you're looking up at the nice smiley face emoji. Anything you could possibly need, you can find at fujisports.com.
Let's talk RŌL TV. There's so much content on there. It's ridiculous at this point. But I think what is even more intriguing, as time went on during the project, we've been recording most of the events that were taking place here at RŌL Academy. At this point, I mean, we have guys like Chris Howder, Arman Fadi, Rafael Lovato Sr., and Pete the Greek. I mean, there are so many different events that we've kind of recorded it. Don't you think that's amazing? I mean, points of reflection and kind of going back for all the students to see what really happened and refresh their memory.
Yeah, I think it's great, you know, being able to go back and look at all these high-level practitioners, Octavio Cudo, like one of the names you didn't mention. And I mean, just these guys that have been doing this for so long come in, teach these amazing seminars and workshops, and it's all recorded and there for you to watch.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you want to get additional savings on all this, type in code RŌL Radio at the coupon and get additional 30% off of your membership.
Nice. Go to RŌLAcademy.tv. What's up, everyone, and welcome back. If you haven't already, please hit the like, share, subscribe, download, listen, and whatever other button there is, and leave us a review wherever you do listen. That ensures that we can continue bringing you the great guests and amazing content that you have come to expect. Today's guest dives deep into how he went from an overweight white belt to a multi-time world champion. Arin Adjamian joins us to discuss his journey, how success is not linear, the impact his father and coaches have made on him, and more. Here's the RŌL Radio with entrepreneur, instructor, multi-time world champion, and Robert Drysdale black belt, Arin Adjamian.
Welcome to RŌL Radio.
And we are live.
Here we go.
Once again, number 207.
That's a lot, man. We've done a lot of these.
Jesus, it's been long 4 years to be 4. Jeez, it's been a lot of conversations, a lot of guests.
Hold up, boys. I lost
this
you.
one though.
Yeah, Arin, great to see you again. I just saw you last week. It was great seeing you in person. Great to see you again. How you've been?
I'm good. I'm getting a little bit of a lag here, guys. It says it's uploading
all
at
right.
75. Okay.
That's all right.
So,
just
yeah.
keep going. Yeah.
Okay.
How is everything going?
It's good, man. It's, staying busy. Life's been very different than what I'm used to over the last year and a half. So just trying to keep my head above water and do the things that I enjoy and, keep up with things.
Before we started recording, you said it's been a while since you've been on the mat, or at least the training has been less than desirable. What's holding you back?
Well, multiple things. We opened up a new business. I ended up moving from Vegas to LA. Let me see now, about a year and a half ago, a little over a year and a half ago. And when I moved here, we opened up a new business, 2 new businesses, and that was taking up a lot of my time. And then I also have a 3-year-old. And as much as I love jiu-jitsu and training, I need to be a father first. So I have to be present and help my wife out with her. So, these things kind of like all interconnect and make it more difficult to get to the mats than I'd like to.
How do you balance that in your mind? Because from one side, having that personal time, even 1 hour a week or 2 hours a week really keeps us sane and healthy. I'm not even talking about the physical health. I'm talking about mental health, right? And to be able to provide and really make these tough decisions for business, family, and be there present for our families. At the same time, being present physically at those things is really, really important too. How do you balance that, right? Because those are tough choices, aren't they?
Yeah, they're very tough choices, and right now there isn't a balance. I would say, you're trying to triage the situation and see where your attention is needed the most. My attention is needed most with my family, and B, most with my business. So I've kind of put that in the forefront recently, and my jiu-jitsu has suffered because of that. So in plain tense, having to go, okay, what am I going to put my attention into today? Am I going to put my attention into my family? Okay, so I need to be home. Into my business, okay, I need to go to these meetings at noon, and I missed the legendary noon classes with Professor Alberto, obviously. And that's something that I thrive off of. I love those noon classes. He's probably the only school I've ever been to that has such a successful noon class. Every other school doesn't have it. But everybody shows up.
Let's talk about that for a second, because from the moment I stepped my foot into Legacy for first time, literally until even last week, you step into a noon class over there, and it's like freaking 50 people. That's one. Is like 25 black belts, and the environment that is in that class is irreplaceable. Do you feel the same?
Yeah, I really enjoy that class. I go there to have a good time. I go there to get a workout in, and like shoot the shit with the guys, and and Professor Alberto teaches it 90% of the time, and you want to learn from the source. The guys there, the coaches there are amazing. Don't get me wrong, but when Professor Alberto's teaching it, it's something else. And it's really strange, and it's always been like that. I've been going to Professor Alberto's gym since 2000 and I believe 11 in Burbank, and that noon class has always been the class that's like everybody wants to go to. Guys who like they change jobs, they have like things in their contract that allow them to go train at noon. I literally have talked to guys who've done that, and I've been like, dude, that's so cool. So that class is a lot of fun. It gets to the point where there isn't enough room on the mats, and you keep bumping into people, and you got to be careful, which it's a good problem to have.
Yeah. What do you think makes it so unique?
It's the culture that Professor Alberto creates, the environment that he creates at that noon class to make people want to go to it. He is a genius when it comes down to running a school. He knows how to keep people together. He knows how to make sure that the school isn't cliquey. And obviously, it's his amazing instruction on top of it. He's integrated so many different things into jiu-jitsu that are helpful, that are symbiotic with it, and people just enjoy being around him. He's just all around a badass, man. Like, I love being around Alberto. I mean, he's when I'm around him, I feel better about myself. That's how he makes people feel, and they want to come to his class. He doesn't teach the 7:30 class. He doesn't teach the 8:30 class at night. He teaches a noon class. That's his thing. And because he teaches that noon class, he does a really, really good job, and we're able to handle it. We're able to.
You look distracted.
I guess someone's walking into my door. I'm like, what's going on? we're so sorry. I lost my trail of thought. Because he does such a good job, he attracts a lot of people, and he attracts all the high level guys. They kind of take a break from their day in the middle of the day, and they go roll. And that's such a great thing to do. And he has the showers there to make it easy to be able to just take a shower and go back to work. So he's really created the environment for a noon class to be successful.
What is so special? What is so special about jiu-jitsu for you particularly? Like, I've heard you talk about it, on a deeper level, about how it overflows into the real life, how to it kind of spills over into our professional life, into families, for those who don't train jiu-jitsu, this is very difficult to comprehend. Like, I've had these conversations with others who don't engage in jiu-jitsu, and they just don't get it. They don't understand what it means with activity can spill over into everything else?
So I guess I should go back to the start of things and how I got into it to better explain like what it means to me, what it's done in my life
Yeah.
personally. Um, Back in 2009, end of 2009, I met my now wife, and I dabbled in jujitsu for a couple months at another school, like 5 years before that. But the school was not a good environment, so I stopped. But the most important thing I can say about it is I was very heavy when I started jujitsu. You know, I'm 6'4", and I was 340 pounds when I started jujitsu, so I was a really big guy. And I hated running because I get shin splints, and other activities I couldn't find it fun, But my wife got a position as a program director at a Gracie Baja, and I started training, and I immediately got the itch, and that that itch grew into a rash, as you can say, and I just kept scratching at it, and I couldn't stop, and so, I went from a 340-pound guy to I lost about 100 pounds.
And
Is at
what
my
time
peak.
period are we talking?
It
How
was
long of it?
about it was about 6 years total. The first couple of years, I went slow. I was heavy. I was training like 2 or 3 times a week, and then Professor Alberto kind of like motivated me to start pushing harder. So I started training twice a day. I also, in that time, opened up a sports nutrition consultation company.
Hmm.
I'm really research oriented. So I learned a lot about nutrition and the correct way to do it, and came up with my own strategy. And that was the first business I opened up, which was very successful. It was online 100% before Instagram and Facebook were a thing, and now everybody's a nutritionist, right? And it kind of just like saved my life. Is the easiest way I could tell you. Like it, I was on antidepressants at the time when I started, and took me off of that, and it gave me this confidence and purpose that I couldn't have without it. Martial arts is, the strive for perfection, in my opinion, something that you could never reach. So you continually push yourself forward and try to get 1% better than you were yesterday, and you're a success. It's all you got to do is get 1% better. But there's so much that comes into that to become that 1% better. People don't usually have the mental fortitude or the time or whatever X factor there is to do that. And I was lucky enough to be able to do that. So jujitsu for me, how it played into my life, it actually encompassed my life. I would go to sleep, wake up every morning thinking about jujitsu and how I could get better. And in that struggle of trying to get better in jujitsu, I come to find out that other things in my life were less daunting. I could apply the same formula I apply to jujitsu to everything else in my life, whether it's my business, my family, or any other issue or complexity that I was dealing with. It wasn't difficult for me to look at it through the eyes of a practitioner at that point and go, okay, what's the problem and how can I fix it? It gets you into that mindset. And so nothing is overly daunting anymore. Everything is so much easier to deal with. Even the hardest things, the things that you feel are hard, you're like, okay, there's got to be a way out of this. Just like you go into jujitsu, you get on the mats and somebody arm bars you 6 times in one session, and you go, okay, you know what? I'm doing something wrong. There's got to be a way out of this. There's something that I need to do to fix this. And then you start thinking about it. You reverse engineer the arm bar. So you apply that to everything else in life. It's spiritually very healing. When I go to jujitsu, I think of it as meditation. I don't think of it as training. I think of it as a chance for my mind to shut off and just do what's in front of me. And because I enjoy doing what's in front of me so much, it's easy to shut my mind off. I just train, I just go through the motions that I need to go through to make it to the end of class. And by the end of class, I feel great.
You touched on so many things in the last 2 minutes that I had to make some notes here. I want to ask you specifically. You talk about shutting mind off, and you're talking about troubleshooting. Many would consider this as almost an oxymoron. How do you troubleshoot if your mind is off? And I know exactly what you mean by that, but please elaborate, because this really touches on a unique level of thinking while you're being physically challenged?
So in the midst of it, you don't really troubleshoot like that. I find myself, I go through a session. There's a guy who, for example, I can't pass his guard no matter what I do. I'm having a hard time. Or there's a guy who keeps triangling me over and over again in class, and I can't figure out what to do. But when I see someone's better than me at something, I'll keep putting myself in that position to try to understand what they're doing. And then, so I'm collecting data as I'm training, right? My mind's shut off, but I'm collecting data. And then after class, that entire day, the next day, until the next time I see that guy, I am deconstructing everything that happened. So I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, what can I do to get past this guy? Or what can I do to, not let this guy triangle me or armbar me or sweep me or whatever it is, whatever the variable X is. I call it training with a purpose. Yeah, my mind is shut off from everything. But if I'm winning all the time, then it's completely shut off. If I beat everybody in class, then I'm not learning anything. It's kind of a waste of time almost, But if someone bests me some way or makes something difficult, there's a mental note that happens there, then I start paying attention to it. And then after class, on the way home, as I'm going to sleep, whatever it is, I'll start thinking about, okay, what is this guy doing that's giving me a hard time and how can I get around it? I'll go back to a partner I had back when I first moved to Vegas. His name's Ross Keeping. This guy, nobody could triangle me back then. I was still a little heavy set. I was like 290 pounds. And nobody, I was like, okay, yeah, go ahead. Here you go. Triangle me, And nobody would be able to get it. And this guy would, like it was nothing. So I caught myself every class going in. And as I trained with him, one arm in, one arm out, to let him set up his triangle, to figure out what is this guy doing that's besting me? And how can I get out of it? And what can I do? And then I come to realize, hey, you just can't leave one arm in, one arm out. This guy's perfected that triangle. This guy has literally perfected that triangle. So you have to change your game and make sure that he doesn't get to that point, So I guess that's what I mean by it. My mind does shut off when I roll,
Yeah.
But there are things that I will make mental notes of. Somebody taps me, somebody does something to me or makes it difficult for me to do something. I'm excited. That's when I'm excited. I'm not upset. I'm excited. I'm looking at that and going, oh snap, I can learn something here, like that I'm doing something wrong or I forgot something or whatever it is, in your journey. And I just sit there and I obsess over it until I figure it out afterwards.
Well, also, I think what's important really to acknowledge that our lives today are so busy with the intake of information that 1 hour being on the mat, allowing ourselves to really separate from the quote unquote reality of chaos that we experience remaining of the day. Just that on its own brings a next level of healthy environment to what we really need as humans. I feel that, at least me personally, I'm bombarded with information constantly, all the time. Even if I choose to ignore it, it's still coming.
Well, I was going to say, we often talk about you shut your mind off, but I think it's more of a singular focus. It's not, your mind's not shut off. You're now all you're focusing on is jiu-jitsu.
Yeah,
you're not focusing on work. You're not focusing on the phone calls you got to make or what happened at home. It's just a singular focus.
Yeah, that's a good way of looking at it.
It's a type of meditation, and that's a great way to describe it. It's the equivalent of, turning off all the lights in the house and turning on a candle and just sitting there and staring at the candle. Mm-hmm. It shuts everything else out. So it is a way of shutting your mind down to the everyday. That's a great description, Gary.
Yeah.
I said something smart for once.
There you go. Gary's contribution is over. We can. Do you remember? I'm going to pivot this a little bit way back. Do you remember your very first day on the mat? I try to ask this to every guest that we have. Do you remember the very first time you stepped on the mat at the Gracie Baja?
Not vividly, but I remember the first month, the first couple times getting on and just trying to figure things out. And then I remember the first revelation I had about that.
Oh, please share. Please tell.
Yeah. So, I was a white belt and I was very, very heavy. So on my back, it was very difficult to keep up with people. And this was probably a couple months into training, wasn't too far into training. And like every other spazzy white belt, I was on YouTube just looking at different moves and things that I could use. And I was trying to find a way to keep someone in my guard because people were passing like it's nothing. I couldn't move. I was so heavy. My hips were heavy. Hip escaping was like next to impossible. And I learned lasso guard, spider lasso. And that was the first open guard I had learned. And it was slowing everybody down. And I was able to lasso sweep everybody too, because I was so heavy and I had so much leverage on them. These guys were obviously a lot lighter than me. And, that like just, it was a light bulb in my head when I looked at the video. And then we had a guest instructor come in. I can't remember his name, but he taught it as well. So the first open guard I learned was spider guard, and it just like, boom, hit me. And then, so that I think that's the most important part of jiu-jitsu for your development is those revelations. Like you're like, oh, wait, this works, and it's different for everybody. For me, that's what that was. It was lasso guard.
But the cool thing about these I call them epiphanies, but like about these moments that they continue repeating all throughout. It doesn't matter of their rank. Like even now, I mean, being black belt for a decade, like conversation happens with different people, and it's like, oh, damn it, nobody told me about this. Like I've been on mats for two decades. Nobody told me about this. Why not? Like these moments are so satisfying. They're like this dopamine rush that takes place during that moment. It's like, boom, it just happened. And you immediately incorporate it into your library, and you're putting it in, you're working it, you're troubleshooting, you're making it better, right? Are these the moments that you talk about as a 1% improvement?
The 1% improvement comes with a daily grind. It's the revelation is part, the epiphany, as you said, is part of it. The 1% better comes with you getting up every day and grinding and asking yourself, did I give everything that I could have gave today? Did I learn something? Did something come out of this? Did I put all my effort into it like I did yesterday and put a little bit more than I did yesterday? I was a competitor. From purple belt on, I was competing in 1 to 2 tournaments a month all the way into my black belt. I did a lot of competition, and in doing that competition, I learned a lot about what it takes to be that 1% better every day.
That's a lot of tournaments.
Yeah.
1 to 2 every month. That means that's 12, 20.
Hold on, Thomas was going to do the math.
Relax, okay? Relax, Gary. Relax, okay? You already contributed for today. Just be quiet.
I want to see if we can multiply by 2.
But that's a lot between purple and black, and we know that there is a lot of success behind all of this, and world championships, and we'll dip into that because I want to know what it takes. But from a volume perspective, the amount that takes to feed into that success, I mean, that's a lot of daily grind.
Mm-hmm.
How in the world are you doing this? I mean,
well,
you at this point you are married, you have family, right?
I was married, but I didn't have kids.
But business?
I had a business.
There's a professional success behind some of this, right? On the side, right? You're running a professional career, right? Mm-hmm. And you're still grinding it. First of all, how do you balance wife and training so much? I want to know that recipe.
Well, get a wife that works at a academy first and foremost.
that was early on. That was only a year. I was very, very lucky to have a wife that supported my jiu-jitsu endeavors, And if you ever came to a tournament and watched me fight, I'm sure you heard there was this one girl in the crowd just screaming out. and it's funny, I could hear her voice over my coach's voice, which was 30 feet away from me. And she was all the way up there in the high seats at like IBJJF, and I could hear my wife before I could hear my coach. She was that had to feel good. Yeah, she's great, man. I mean, don't get me wrong. We had our troubles with it too. She had her complaints about it, and every woman's gonna feel a little left out when you're spending so much time training. But she sacrificed a lot for me, so I'm very blessed to have the wife that I do. and that's part of the reason why I was able to do as much as I was able to do.
And probably this is the same reason why you are prioritizing family now and your business over being at the academy, 6 days a week or whatever it might be, right? That balance that you talked about at the very beginning is so important, right? People invest into us. Sometimes it's time for us to invest into other people in order for this cohesive relationship to coexist, right?
Right. I'm doing it under duress. Don't get me wrong. I want to be training, but there's too much. There's too much that's more important than that. And I have to at this point kind of take a step back from that, take care of my family, be there for my daughter and my wife, and provide for them. Versus when it was just me and my wife, and the business I was running then was very, very easy for me to double train and train up to like 4.5 hours a day. So.
You mentioned research a moment ago. You also, for those who don't know, you dab into law. You have double major in philosophy, if I'm reading correctly some of the research that I've done. So schooling and research is something that you do well. Would you agree on that? Does that come easy to you?
It comes easy when I'm interested in the subject. How about that?
Oh, so this is the interesting part, right? Because I was about to ask you, how does that convert into jiu-jitsu? Many consider jiu-jitsu being heavy research like topic where you have to take it upon yourself to really dip into some of these things and really look into them and troubleshoot them and really be well driven. Did you find that conversion or that comparison between schooling that you've done in the past and jiu-jitsu research? Do you see a lot of similarities there?
Of course, I do. I have a bad habit of not putting any effort into something I'm not interested in. It's the truth.
That's fair.
No matter what it is, and I actually didn't do well in grade school because of that. All the way into high school, I kind of just slacked because the subjects were not interesting to me. The ones that were, easy A. Everything else. I mean, let's just say I had to go to night school to graduate high school. Okay, so
fair enough.
I got a 2.2 GPA coming out of high school.
Okay, so explain this to me. So from that to going to law school, and then all the other schooling that you've done, that's a very drastic change. Is that purely driven by the interest?
Yeah, it's driven by interest. It's driven by a little maturity too. I had to take. I went to a junior college and I had to take courses I didn't like, but I didn't care. I just, sat down and kind of worked hard, and I had a really high GPA that got me into UCLA for my undergrad, where I double majored in philosophy and the historical study of religion, both very, very interesting subjects to me. And then after I graduated from UCLA, I went to law school and hated law school, honestly. Was not a fan of it.
Why?
I thought I had a romanticized idea of it, and it ended up being much more cutthroat and ugly than I could have ever imagined. So after law school, my wife and I decided to move to Vegas. We opened up a business out there and did a 10-year stint in Vegas, and that's when we came back a year and a half ago.
Yeah, too many law TV shows, huh? The perception was different than the reality.
I think the biggest issue with law school is that they grade on a curve. And when you grade on a curve, you create competition in a way that you can't imagine. People are sharing misinformation with each other, so the curve drops. And people become very cliquey, and it just became this very ugly thing for me. And then I lost a little bit of motivation as well because I had already opened up my nutrition business and I was already making more money than a lawyer would coming out of law school. Mm-hmm. So I was looking to diversify my portfolio, and I come home one day from training. My wife's like, "I don't want to be a housewife. I want to open up a business." I'm like, "Okay, tell me what you want." And then the next day I come back, she goes, "Let's move to Vegas and open a med spa." I'm like, "Okay, it's not a big deal to me. My business was online. I could have gone anywhere in the world and still done my business. So it didn't matter whether I stayed in LA or Vegas." So we moved out there, had the successes we did out there. And it all worked out in the end is what I should say. But if there's one thing I could change about the American law school system is I would get rid of the curve. I really would. I would have more stringent grade passing rules, right? But I would get rid of that curve.
As I'm listening to you, it appears to me that making some of those tough decisions is very easy for you. Would you agree with that? I mean, picking up and moving across the country, or at least to different
Not a
states, I
problem.
mean, that wasn't a big deal. You
Nope,
know, dropping
that
off
was
law
easy.
school, that's not a big deal. Open up another business, that's not a big deal.
Yeah,
Do they come
because
easy
those
for
are
you?
when they make sense. When something makes sense, it comes easy for me. When something doesn't make sense in my head, like my wife's telling me something, hey, let's do this, and it's not making sense in my head, I'm like, there's this huge wall in front of me at this point. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
But when something is logical to me, like, hey, this is a good next step, why wouldn't I take it? And my wife is more of an entrepreneur than I am. You know, she's a genius when it comes down to business. You know, she's really good at it, and she created something big from nothing in Vegas. So I have a lot of trust in her when she says, "Hey, let's move to Vegas and do this." You know, she put everything in front of me and gave me the reasons why we should move to Vegas and do it instead of doing it in LA. And I was like, "How could I say no when you've taken the time to get all the research together and put the empirical evidence in front of me, and we see that we have a lot of potential in Vegas versus LA." It was an easy decision.
Especially when the person that you need support from or you want to support is literally on board with you. I mean,
Yeah,
it's difficult to say no, right?
absolutely.
As all of this is unfolding, you start competing, and you said that you were competing quite a bit, you know, and you're going through these ranks, purple, brown, you know, and then black, and talk a little bit more about the preparation for the ultimate test at the World Championships. I mean, at that point,
Oof.
it gets serious, doesn't it?
It got serious from the beginning. I had something to prove to myself, and
Okay, so
so
when
I
is the
sat there.
beginning? Let's rewind. Where is the beginning? When are you proving? When does Aaron need to prove to himself? When is that?
I think
When is that point?
it was the first year I moved to Vegas. It was a little before that with Professor Alberto. I started double training. I really wanted my purple belt from Professor Alberto before I left, and I
Hmm.
knew I had to put more of an effort in and for him to see it and go like, okay, you're ready. So I was really lucky to earn my purple belt from him before I left. And then about 6 months into Vegas, I was like, okay, I come, I train, I'm doing it haphazardly. I was training maybe 4 days a week, whatever. And I said, okay, I want to compete. I want to show the world that I can be the best. Why can't I be number one? Someone has to take that spot. Why can't it be me? So I was like, okay. I looked at it and I said, consciously, what do you have to do in order to be at that level to take first place, right? And I looked at other competitors, I looked at my schedule, and I said, everybody's training like they live at the gym. The guys who are up top, right, regularly, the Busheshas, the Leandro Lowe's, all those guys, they live in the gym. They don't do anything else. They don't have another job. I was lucky enough where I had a business where I could work in the morning from 6 to 10 and then work again from 2 to 4 and be done, which means I could have double trained every day. So I started doing that. I said, okay, I'm going to put everything I have into this. I'm going to double train every day, Monday through Friday, take the weekends off. And that's what I
Was that
started doing.
was that the point where you competed for first time, or there was a competition
I,
experience prior to that?
and there was minor competition experience prior to that. I
So
probably competed in my, yeah, go ahead.
essentially, what you're saying is you're going head in. You're going head first. Like
Yeah,
there is no I'm gonna half-ass this. If I'm gonna do this, we're gonna go all in. We're gonna do this right, and there is only one outcome.
right, exactly. And
Where
then
does this? Go ahead.
no, please.
Where does this drive come from?
I couldn't tell you. I couldn't tell you. I think it came from me having this, being a little self conscious about my weight before I started jujitsu. I think it came from me being so heavy that people avoided me, and I think it came from me going, okay, you can better yourself. You can be that guy who's standing on top of the podium regularly. You just have to put the effort in. You need to prove to everybody that you can do it. You need to prove it to yourself first. So I think that's where the motivation really came from. Um, just being able to prove to myself that I can be good at something, like one of the best, not just good, but one of the best.
Is there a point throughout this entire time from the first tournament that you're aiming for to even today, where you thought to yourself, I have achieved what I wanted, or the hunger continues just remaining there? The itch needs to be scratched.
There's a couple things I still want to do. I've won every major tournament at some point or another, but there's still a couple things I'd like to do once my kid is a little older. So the itch to compete is very real still, but it's kind of been put on the back burner because I just don't have the time right now. If I had the time, then yeah, I would be competing every month like I was before, because I need to get back into that mindset.
Walk me through that mindset from purple belt all the way up to the black belt world championships. You competing, you grinding, you working hard, you continuously have one objective to be the best of the best of the best. And you keep chipping away at this. I mean, there's clearly success all throughout this. This is not like you're working towards a big peak. There is a clear success. You winning, you going back. Why? Why there's no satisfaction behind that? Why this is not enough? Why do you need more?
I could ask you the same question. Why do you need to go back on the mats and train?
I think this interview is about you.
but the answer
because
is the same.
I'm sickly addicted to this. This is why. I mean, it's
well, there you go.
Yeah,
the answer is the same. It's an addiction. It's an addiction. I really enjoy the process, and I didn't enjoy it at first. Anxiety and nervousness before you fight. It probably took me a year to master my emotions. Going and competing 1 to 2 times a month in my purple belt probably took me at least a year to master my emotions before I stepped on the mats to compete. And most people, 90% of people, have defeated themselves before they ever step on the mat. They're so nervous, they forget everything. Me, when I get on the mats, when I was in my prime and I wasn't thinking. There was nothing to think about. There was no emotions to be felt. You just go out there and you let your body do what you've been training it to do. You beat the crap out of it, 4 hours a day, training it to get it ready for that moment. So you don't need to think anymore. You need to let your body and your mind subconsciously do everything that you've taught it to do.
Was that something that switched right away, or were you conscious of it and working on it the whole time?
I was very conscious of it and working on it. I had to work on calming my emotions down and not panicking and not getting nervous. There's different techniques you can use to do that. And I found the one that works for me. Some people listen to music. Some people do this, do that. I did what specifically worked for me to keep me calm and keep me in the right mindset before I competed.
Why do you think many people don't do that? I mean, that seems so simple.
It isn't. It's very difficult. It's like training a muscle. You have to constantly do it. How many people do you know that compete 12 times a year? Not a lot. Okay, no. I'm going to compete once a year at Worlds, So over 10 years, you're competing less than I do in 1 year. Right?
Yeah.
So you have to constantly compete in order to get over that emotion so your jiu-jitsu can show. If you get over that emotion and your mind is at peace when you're competing, then it's just like another day on the mats for you. And you can really express your jiu-jitsu the way you truly know it. But if you're nervous, your heart's racing, you're over gripping, you're forgetting a bunch of things and just on the defensive because you just don't want to lose. Then you're going to make mistakes and people are going to capitalize on it.
Well, and that's a big mindset change too, from not wanting to lose versus wanting to win, right? I mean,
right.
that's often talked about in sports psychology, how this is being approached, and there's a big difference between those who do succeed and those who unfortunately don't.
Absolutely. And it is a mindset.
As you go through these ranks and as you're climbing up towards that black belt level, does your mindset change? Does the work ethic change? Does it increase because the level of complexity or the competition is changing? Or are you just coasting through it in a sense of this has worked for me?
I recall working very, very hard up until like probably the last 6 months of my brown belt, like just grinding. And even in the last 6 months of my brown belt, I was still grinding. But not as hard because I realized I didn't need to push that hard anymore. What do I mean by that? I was overtraining, and there was a detriment to that. So I learned to kind of balance things out and not go as heavy so that when the day came for me to compete, I wasn't so broken down. And so that was really an important step for me to learn to balance that, to go, okay, you know what? I don't need to be training doubles, the week at a competition. If I'm not ready by the week at a competition, I have to train doubles, then I've already done something wrong.
Yeah. And yeah, that's often underestimated fact of, the last couple of weeks before the comp and trying to make these last final adjustments versus focusing on the recovery and really your mindset of where you need to be prior to that moment, the more important event. Was there an event that triggered that mind change of overtraining, or was that just point of maturity for you over the period of years of experience?
I think it was a point of maturity, and I think it was good coaching. I was very lucky to train under Robert Drysdale at Zenith in Vegas.
Yeah.
Drysdale runs a very competition-oriented school. Okay, and the way he taught things really opened my mind up to my, or I should say, it really increased my fighter IQ. I have defeated people. I have no reason to defeat, like no place on this person to defeat. They're so much better than me because I had better fighter IQ out there. Like I don't know how else to explain it. There's guys that are a lot better than me that I've beat because of the way Drysdale taught me to compete, because I had such a good grasp on the rule system, and because I was so well prepared to see him and fight him. I'd scouted him. I knew his moves. I knew what he was going to do before he did it. So all of that comes into play as well. I always give the metaphor of fog of war. Okay, I know a lot of guys who go to competitions and they don't know who they're fighting. They don't know anything about them. They're like, I'm just going to go out there and play my game. It's like, why? If you were a world military or the United States military, wouldn't you send a scout out to where you're about to land and go to war to kind of see what's going on before you go out there so you're prepared for it? I put the same philosophy into my jiu-jitsu. I would sit there and watch the matches of all of the people that I might compete against and take notes. And then I would take those notes to my instructor and I'd be like, hey, this guy does this, what should I do? This guy does that, what should I do? And I would be prepared. I'd have an arsenal with me. If you watch the videos from my Pan Am win, I knew what all of my opponents were going to do before they did it. All of them. It was easy, almost. I don't want to put it that way, but it was. I knew this guy was going to pull guard. I knew this guy was going to go into deep half. I knew this guy was going to stand with me, and I had to worry about his judo. So all of that was already in my pocket. So all I had to do was react to what they were going to do, which is something I was training for before the competition.
What you're describing is a strategic approach to the game.
Yeah.
I don't recall who we had on the show and who mentioned this, but I remember they were saying that jiu-jitsu competition is simply a game. If you know the rules, you know how to play the rules, now you're in a game. Otherwise, you're just reacting to what your opponent is doing. And I think, at least from my perspective, that's what you're describing. You not only want to be good at jiu-jitsu, but you also want to know how to compete with your opponent, how to beat them, and not to fight their best game, right? Because ultimately, that's what it boils down to.
Right. You're playing a game, there's a rule set. You have to know the rule set so you can exploit it to the best of your ability. It's like, I'm going to play chess, but I don't know what the rook and the bishop does. But I'm going to play anyways. That's other people's mindsets.
Yeah.
They don't have the complete picture in front of them to play the game to their optimal level. I did. I knew every rule. I knew things that most competitors didn't know. Simple things like if you're on top of someone's half guard and you grab their head simply by just grabbing their head and holding it for a couple seconds and him ripping it off, guess what? Advantage. That's huge. People don't know that. People don't realize that. But that thing is huge. That means if you guys are tied or you're behind by an advantage and you just grab this guy's head and pull away, you get an advantage. Now you're ahead or you're tied, right? That's a game changer. How many people could have won the match that they lost if they knew that, right? So, yeah, learning the rules is really, really important for any game, any tournament. Knowing what you can and can't do and where you can exploit it is extremely important if you want to win.
Walk through me through that final match at the Worlds. You're there. You made it to the final. Life is good. Is the anxiety any higher? Is your
No.
mind drifting?
Masters Worlds, when I got my black belt, the last guy I fought was Casey, I remember. And he had come and trained with us a couple of times at Drysdale's. Really good wrestler, really good jiu-jitsu guy. A little nutty, but I think we all are at that level, you know? We're all a little nutty. And I remember going up against him and going, okay, how am I going to take this guy down? Like, how am I going to take him out? And I had to use stuff that I don't regularly use, you know, to kind of like wear him down and wait for him to make mistakes. So there wasn't really, again, I just shut down. I thought about what I was going to do. You know, I said, okay, I'm fighting this guy. I know a little bit about the way he trains because I've trained with him. And so what can I do? And I knew that a direct approach wouldn't work with him. His wrestling was really good. So I had to find ways to slow him down, tire him down, and let him make the mistake so I could take advantage of it. And that's how I won that. So I wasn't anxious or nervous about it at all, actually.
Any feelings afterwards? There. You win, your hand goes up. Is there a point of satisfaction?
I'm a big baby. I am so satisfied. You will find pictures of me and videos.
This is why I'm asking. I want to know what was inside your head.
What's inside my head? When you win something like that, you look back at everything you did to reach that moment and you go, it was worth it. You know, I proved to myself that this was worth it. I didn't waste my time. I put all this time and energy into it and I got something out of it. You know, I reached my goal. So that I can't help but let emotions get the best of me when I do that, because I was so committed, so obsessed with that. And it wasn't just about winning gold. Again, it was just about proving to myself that I belonged there. I think that's the easiest way I could put it.
What about the flip side of that? Any doubts during losses? Any emotions getting the best of you at that point?
Yeah, absolutely. I would go hide under some bleacher and just cry my eyes out sometimes. I would. Nobody knows that but my wife, because she's the only one who's ever seen me do it. But when I lost, I would go and literally I would hide behind a bleacher. I'd put a towel over my head. I'd cry my eyes out, be upset with myself, and then get up and move on and go back to class and fix what I did wrong.
Yeah, so there wasn't doubts as far as maybe this isn't for me. It was, okay, now I got to go fix it. Once the release was over, now let's go fix it.
Yep. It was always back to the drawing board, at least after my purple belt days. I remember as a white and blue belt, you know, I went to tournaments and I got my butt kicked first round and I was like, maybe this isn't for me. I remember saying that to myself. But when I made that commitment as a purple belt, there was no stopping. I was a rock going down a boulder going down a very steep hill. I didn't care what was in front of me. I'm going to get over it. And I think that's what really makes someone successful in life. People lack grit. Grit is the ability to overcome any obstacle, no matter what that's in your way, no matter how long it takes, you keep moving forward. And you'll see the most successful people, you know, whether it's jiu-jitsu, business, whatever it is they're doing, they have grit. Without grit, you can't do it.
Great book, by the way. I love Grit. Great read. You talk about drive for perfection. You talk about that boulder coming down very steep hill. You talk about grit, this drive for this goal. How come most don't have it? How come most give up so quickly? And I'll even take this deeper. Look how many people give up before blue or at the blue belt. And we are talking about being the best of the best of the best.
Right.
Why this is so hard? Why the recipe seems so simple? It is difficult to do it, but the recipe is pretty simple. Show up every day, improve 1%, just a little bit, back to drawing board, draw conclusions, and simply don't give up. Just simply don't quit. Overcome the obstacles. Fix it. Just simply fix it. Why this is so hard for so many?
I believe people have egos. You got to let go of your ego. You got to be a knucklehead to do what we do. You really do. Think about it. When you first come into jiu-jitsu, right, you're whitening into your blue belts. You're doing nothing but tapping.
Yeah.
You know, every once in a while you're able to attack, right, and do good. But for the most part, you're getting your ass kicked.
Yeah.
And, you know, and you're getting little victories in between. So if you have an ego about that, that's going to drive you away real quick. And same goes for competition, right? You go and compete, you train twice a week, and then you go and compete, and the first round you get your ass handed to you. You have two options after that. This isn't for me. I don't want to do jiu-jitsu, or I don't want to compete, whatever, right? Or, oh no, this is never happening again. I'm going to go back and better myself so this guy never does this to me again. No one ever does this to me again. No one's making a highlight reel out of me. You get it? There's two different perspectives that you could have. And most people have the former and not the latter. I had the latter. And I had the former up until my blue belt. I knew I was never going to quit jiu-jitsu because I loved it so much. But I wasn't sure I was going to compete, you know. But something snapped. And I said, I don't care what it takes and how long it takes. I'm going to reach this goal. So I kept moving forward no matter what.
Is this an influence that came from, the outside, like your coaches or perhaps, family or your wife or environment that you were surrounded by? Or is this, something that was deep inside you, just maybe, just little polishing?
I think it came from a little bit of everything. I can credit a lot of it to my dad. My dad was not a father; he was a provider. Okay, he never came to any of my sports. He never did anything like that, But he was a provider, and I went and worked with him. He's an electrician, and when I was a kid in my summers, I used to go help him and work with him. And I remember I was young, and I used to go there, and I used to cry, and I'd be like, "Dad, I hate this, this and that, and I don't want to do this." And he said this term in Armenian, it's chechika, and the translation, the rough translation of that is, "There's no such thing as no." You can't say no. Things have to be done and you have to get them done. Okay? You have to get up and go to work and provide for your family. You have to be a good husband. And so things like that really like set this tone in my character as I grew up. And it didn't really hit home until I was in my 20s where, I started to pay attention, went to school, got into UCLA. All that came from that one thing that was in my back of my head that my dad said, like, hey, there is no giving up. There's no saying, hey, no, I don't want to do this anymore. You can only push forward no matter how hard it is. So, my dad being who he is and working his ass off as an immigrant to try to provide for us, we were a welfare driven family when I grew up. I was piss poor. And so we were three brothers in a single bedroom, all of us as big as I am. So
that creates interesting evening nights.
Yeah. It really did. It really did. And so we had a drive to better ourselves because of that. All three brothers did, and I especially had a drive. I was like, hey man, I can't. At some point I was like, all right, I'm done goofing off. I have to set some goals and focus on them now and not stop until I reach them. So I started setting those goals, and that kind of trickled into jiu-jitsu, and jiu-jitsu helped that in the first place. It helped me become that person. Because it taught me to stand tall against anything that might be in my way.
Isn't it mind-blowing how a behavior of somebody besides us in a very, very young age can impact the trajectory of our life, like what you're describing with your dad? I don't know if necessarily he did that intentionally. This is just somebody who he was. This is just something what he did. He didn't know anything better than simply not saying no. The grit that you described a moment ago, this is it right there. And even though maybe it was not understood by you by 2 decades, at some point that seed starts growing and starts blooming, and there it is, and then that puts you on a path of, nothing but success, right?
Yeah, it's crazy how I don't know why it's stuck in my head. He could have said it and I could have forgotten it, right? I was an early teenager, I think, when he said that to me. I think I was in like middle school or early high school when he said that to me. I think it was middle school actually. And for some reason, I didn't think about that for a long time. And then that memory popped up in my head. My dad saying that to me. And I think I was dealing with some type of, difficult situation. And I could hear my dad saying that to me, and me going, okay, well, I got to get up and just keep moving forward no matter what. And that kind of just stuck. And it's been great. It's been really, really helpful in my life.
A moment ago, you said there's few things you want to do on the mat. What is one of them? What's one of the more important things that you want to achieve?
Oh, as in going out from here?
Moving forward, you said there's still few things you want to achieve. They're still on your bucket list. What's one of them?
I'd like to win Masters again. That's one of the most important things. I'd like to prove to myself again that I can be a competitor. It's weird, right? Because when you reach what a lot will call the top, you have nowhere to go but down after that, right? And I went down, obviously. I'm not the competitor I was 5 years ago, that's for sure. And I'd like to prove to myself that I can get back to that point. That's all. I think that's the main thing I'd like to do with jiu-jitsu. And the other thing is I'd like to just train regularly. I'm having a hard time training regularly. I'm already teaching. I'm already, twice a week I teach a class up here in local to us. You're at the gym, and I help out, but the most important thing to me in jiu-jitsu, other than competing, is passing the knowledge and passing it in the way that I was taught, and the way that I think would benefit these students the most. And I'd always like to keep that a hobby. I know you own a gym, and Albert owns a gym, and my friends own a gym. I don't want to own a gym. I don't want to turn jiu-jitsu into a job, ever. I want it to be my passion and never be a job, because I fear that if I do that and I turn it into the job and everything that comes with it, the negativity that comes with owning a school and, and dealing with different personalities like that would really turn me off. And that's just my opinion. Other people feel great about having a school and they do a great job with that, but for me, I just want to be a student and a competitor.
Well, there's definitely different dynamics between each, right? And continue that passion. We have to do what is necessary. And something that you said just a moment ago, that being on top is only momentary. I just saw I just read an interview with, I think it was Kobe Bryant, and he was saying being a world champion, it's only for one moment, because the moment that moment passes, you're back to square one, with the small difference that now you have more people chasing you. And every time you do it, there is more and more and more people trying to get you not to win again. So there's a lot of truth behind that. And I find it very refreshing to listen to you, to your story, to the drive, to the grit that you're describing throughout your entire life, not only on the mat, but it's pretty clear that your professional life is so successful. You're a family man, and there was so much drive behind all of this that it's quite remarkable. I wish more people had some of the outlook on life, and I think world will be just a simpler and better place, wouldn't it?
It would. I agree. People forget that when you win a world championship, that doesn't mean you're the best in the world. That means you're the best that day.
That is
Any
true.
tournament you win, that doesn't mean I never considered myself the best in the world because I was a world champion. No, I bested everybody that day. That's it. And that's a feather in your cap. But what's a gold medal really worth, to someone? I'll tell you what it's worth to me. After winning 36 IBJJF gold medals, winning a European, Pan American, World Masters World gold medal, all that stuff, right? They sit in my attic now. I don't even look at them anymore. Medal itself isn't important. It's what you learn and when you gain from competing and putting your best effort forward and reaching that point. That's important. The medal is just a small, insignificant piece of all that.
In that case, let's put the medals aside and let me ask you, what is the one thing that you learned through all this time of competing, being on top of the podium, and having those victories, and also having the losses? What is the one thing that you walked away with?
Mental fortitude, I think, would be the best way to put it. The thing that I walked away, that the reason why I competed as much as I did was your worst enemy is the person looking at you in the mirror. And competing made me a better person overall. It made me more efficient. It made me stronger. It made me spiritually more healthy and mentally more tough and mentally more healthy. And you can't put a price on that, guys. You can only imagine how much money I've spent competing. It's not like we get paid to do it, right? And the one takeaway from that for me is it's overall made me a better person. It's made me level up in all aspects of my life.
And I think this is part of that bleeding over to our life off the mat that you described at the very beginning of this conversation. What a beautiful story. What a beautiful life, Arin, that you have lived, and there's so much ahead. Listen, before we start wrapping this up, we've been at this for an hour. What we do at the end of every episode, we have a question for you from our previous guest. He had no idea who will be answering the question. So it's kind of putting you on a spot, and he asks the question completely in blind. Always creates an interesting end of the conversation. Okay, Gary's going to take a lead on it.
Yeah, so here you talked about editing before. We're going to edit this right now because Thomas obviously didn't get my message where I said the question's in the other office.
Oh, okay.
All right, so give me 1 second. I'm going to go get it. So
okay, all right. So Gary's going to go get it. Okay, we got a little pivot to the show. While he's getting the question, what is your desire, a path to success when it comes to jiu-jitsu today? Like today, you want to get back on the mat. You talk about desire, challenging yourselves one more time in the worlds. What would be the reasonable and achievable plan for you to do something, today at the age that you are, with the family that you have, with the profession that you have, with businesses that you own? What's realistic?
Realistically, given my current schedule, I wouldn't be able to reach for that goal. And that's just me being honest with myself.
Yeah.
And maybe a year or two when my child is older and, she's easier to deal with. And this business is, not in its founding year and it's more established and I have staff that I can delegate work to. I can go back to focusing on jiu-jitsu. And even if I were to train once a day, 5 days a week, I feel like I'd be, there where I can go and compete. I didn't have to do it twice a day. That's just me being real with myself, going, okay.
And I think that's really important, being real, setting smart goals, being intelligent about this. I mean, how many people go into competition without preparation? How many people go into or don't compete because they feel they are not ready? I mean, how many students have you run into? I'm not going to compete until I'm purple belt so I can get good at it. I mean, right? But we do face this every single day, right? As instructors, right. as training peers, like we set unrealistic goals for ourselves instead of being very honest about what we are facing, the environment that we find ourselves in, and how do we develop a plan? I mean, is this achievable? Well, if the answer is yes, then let's develop a plan. Let's set goals, milestones, and let's chase it, right? Let's figure it out. Wouldn't you agree with that?
Absolutely, yes. So right now I'm just kind of like on cruise control, training when I can, and then very grateful that I still can train a little bit, and just working my way back into that groove will take some time because of outside factors.
Yeah. No, I'm sure you'll get there. I'm sure you'll get there. Gary, you ready finally to do this?
You had one job, Gary.
We had one job. I get it. Before we started recording, didn't I say I don't make mistakes?
You're flawless.
Came back to put me in the ass today, didn't it? All right. So this is from Zelvis Slootemaker. And he wanted to know, what should you say to a brand new student so they enjoy their jiu-jitsu journey?
So fitting.
Wow, that is a good question. What do you say to a brand new student so they could enjoy their jiu-jitsu journey? I would say specifically leave your ego at the door. if you really want to enjoy this journey, leave your ego at the door and remind yourself the hardest part of jiu-jitsu is showing up. Everything else after that's easy.
That's one of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
Both of them. Leaving ego and keep showing up. I mean, those are the two most difficult things for people, especially for guys. I think for ladies, this might be different, but for guys, I mean, our egos are so big, aren't they?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's why earlier I said you got to be a knucklehead to do this.
Yeah.
You really do.
Yeah.
You have to take punishment and keep coming back and find a joy in that. And if you find a joy in that, you find a joy in the little victories of not getting tapped. I'll give you a perfect example. When I first started rolling with Robert Drysdale, okay, I used to gauge my abilities and my progress based upon how many times he tapped me in a 6-minute round. When I first started rolling with him, he would tap me about 6 to 8 times in a 6-minute round. But closer to the end, maybe he was getting me once, or maybe he wasn't getting me at all. I don't know. I can't remember. Don't quote. But even as a brown belt and a black belt training with the guy, I felt like a white belt. So it takes me back to that, like finding the little joys in oh man, he only tapped me 4 times instead of 8 times today. Hey, I improved a little. He might have had a bad day. Who knows, right? But you guys want to talk about scary, like having a scary training partner. Robert Drysdale is a scary, scary training partner. If you have ever rolled with him, if you're listening to this and you've rolled with him, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
And the funny thing is that he's one of the nicest people in person. Oh, yeah. Like, we've had him here for seminars. We've had him on the show. You can just, shoot crap with him, make jokes and all this, and then you roll with him and things change.
Yeah. He's highly intelligent, highly competitive, really good at the way he teaches jiu-jitsu, and that's just the nicest guy you could ever meet. He's friendly and nice to everybody, and I consider Robert like one of those mad scientists who has the answer for everything, and he forgets it every day, and then it comes up with the answer again the next day. He has so many aspects of his life that he wants to pursue and understand.
Yeah.
He's a perfectionist in all of them. But one thing that he always did square and straight is teach jiu-jitsu in a way that was amazing for me. And I was so lucky to have him as a training partner. Not a lot of guys. Drysdale was very specific about making sure that you train with the person that was your weight. We used to group us up like that. And luckily, he and I are in the same weight class.
Or unluckily.
Or unluckily.
Lucky for who?
I never looked at it like, oh shit, I'm going to Drysdale again. I always took it as an opportunity.
Yeah.
Because I could barely do anything against him. He had me figured out. So I had to evolve in order to.
But that also reminds us there's levels to all of this, right? New students look up to blue or purple belts. Some of those purple belts look up to the brown and black belts. And then you do get to this black belt level. And then sometimes you run into Robert Drysdale, and it just simply reminds you there's levels. There is so much more ahead, and there are people who are just so brilliant about this. It's just mind-blowing.
It keeps you humble. Through all my success, all my success in my competitions, it really did keep me humble. Because I would, in brown and black belt, I would go home every day after class feeling like I fucking sucked. That never, ever went away. I have a rule. If I'm the best person at the gym, I don't want to be at that gym anymore. Someone needs to make me feel like I suck. In order for me to stay at that gym, someone has to challenge me, right? So Drysdale was like the epiphany of that. He was a gold standard. Like, you couldn't mess with him, man. He is so brutal in his jiu-jitsu. He's so technical. And I can only wish that one day I'm half of what he is on the mats and off the mats. He's a great guy.
What a phenomenal story. What a phenomenal life. I mean, it is, it's just very refreshing to listen to you, as I said a moment ago. Before we wrap this up officially, if anybody wants to connect with you, are you available social media or anything? Feel free to share some of that in case any of our listeners would like to drop you a line of questions.
You can reach out to me on Instagram. it's Arin Adjamian, and it'll come up as Dajits, DAJITS, with a space in between.
Mm-hmm.
Feel free to drop a line. I keep an open mind, and I answer anybody's questions. I've done it over the years. A lot of people have messaged me with inspiring stuff that they've said about watching me compete and this and that. I'm so grateful that I have people who look at who've looked at my career and gain inspiration from it, especially the guys who are heavy set that would come to me and say, "Hey man, I listened to your podcast. I know what you went through, and it's so cool. I'm so inspired." That's a great feeling, man. That's the best feeling in the world. So drop a line, reach out. I promise I'm the friendliest guy in the world. I'm a big teddy bear. I look intimidating
until they roll with you, and that's when things change. Okay, I can speak to them myself. Okay, but listen, what a great story. What a great success story. We're so inspiring. Oh, let's just listen to you the whole thing. And it's before we end, do you find your current point of time where you are today as successful? Have you achieved success at this point?
Let me explain something about success. Success is not linear. Okay, so you can't say, yes, I've achieved success. I have achieved success in my life in both business and in jiu-jitsu and, other aspects of my life. But when I sold everything in Vegas and I moved here, I started from square one again. Okay, so now I am on the path to be successful again, at least in business and for my family and things like that. So it's never a linear path. It breaks up. Sometimes you got to go over a hill. Sometimes you got to cross a river. And I feel like last year I reached at one of those points where I had to cross something or climb something. So I am still climbing it. But the good news is I'm just about at the peak. That's the way I would put it. And that's just a humble response to it all. So I wouldn't say I'm successful right now. I have been successful in my life, but I am reaching success now with my endeavors.
And I think that's what makes this conversation so interesting. And it's so interesting to listen to you, the humble approach to all of this. And it's not cookie cutter. You're really chasing it. The grit is very visible in everything that you say. So congratulations to you. We'll be just sitting on the sidelines and watching you do the amazing things. And I can't wait to see your worlds again. And, hopefully next time I roll with you, you're going to be nicer to me. That's all I'm going to say.
I'm always nice. Don't say that.
I don't know. I've been underneath you. And let
me ask you this. Did I neon belly you?
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Thank you.
If you see... I have tapped a couple people in competition with my neon belly, so I don't neon belly any of my training partners.
Please spare me.
I am nice.
If I'm not there, please video pictures, send them my way.
That's hilarious.
Arin, it's been phenomenal talking to you. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for being so inspiring and just all the wisdom. We truly appreciate it. Gary?
Yeah, Thomas does the bookings on these, and when I saw your name come across my schedule, it just put a big smile on my face. I was fortunate enough to spend an evening with you last December, hanging out, and I can say firsthand what you hear today for our listeners is what you get. He's this genuine article. So I appreciate your time today, and thanks for hanging out with us.
Guys, thank you so much. It's an honor. I appreciate coming out and giving a little bit about my life, and I appreciate you guys listening and the viewers or listeners listening, and thank you again.
Let's wrap it up for today. Later, guys.
All right, peace.
Thank you for listening to RŌL Radio. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to leave us a review and help us make the show even more amazing. For future episodes, check out our website and follow us on all major podcast platforms. Take care.